Welcome to the Cecil Hurt Show. I'm Rachel Baribeau, and I am your host this season. If you're wondering, I'm not Chris Ratty. He has gotten the boot, and they've upgraded, maybe. So we're going to go ahead and get on to the show. Later on, there'll be a place where you can send us your questions because we answer your questions on this show. But the man of the hour is in the studio, so let's get started. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you? It's great to have you here.
I'm very excited. It's we got, 11 days till college football kicks off, and it's going to be a great season.
It is. Look forward to it.
A big topic going on right now is what's going on with Ingram and Julio Jones and this supposed fishing trip. With this 56-year-old man, people do not know. The big question right now is what is the relationship that this man had with these players, previous to maybe them coming to the University of Alabama.
Right. His name's Curtis Anderson from Athens, Alabama. He owns his own plumbing contracting business. Says he's not a football fan. The records seem to support that. He's not a guy who holds season tickets or hangs around the football building. In fact, says his family, they're fans of another school completely. So, but like a lot of people in Alabama, we had a place in Gulf Shores and met Julio Jones down there, apparently working. Julio used to work at a marina in Gulf Shores, which is not far from his home in Foley, both in Baldwin County. Relationship started there, and the man says that they did go on a charter fishing trip, that Julio and Mark Ingram helped him, that he's done this kind of thing, that loved to fish, wasn't able to fish, they helped him fish. So a lot of people will look into it in terms of the Southeastern Conference and University of Alabama. They'll prepare a report, and we'll see what the NCAA has to say about it. And there are a lot of questions involved. There's the question of whether this individual is a representative of athletics interest.
Right.
There's amateurism questions. Right now, in terms of what's going to happen, what's going to be the eligibility status for those two Alabama players or anybody else that might have been involved, we'll wait and see.
Mr. Anderson has come out and made a statement and said, paints a picture that these guys were really wonderful, upstanding guys in the sense that he had some medical issues where he used to hunt, he used to fish, and that these guys literally carried him onto the boat and were just really stand-up guys literally and figuratively. Right.
Again, that's his story. I think that there's certainly no reason to question his veracity. There's certainly no question that he does have those health issues, and what all his motivation was. It motivated by the fact that they're football players? Was it not? Some of that, just you have to know the person and know their background, and I'm sure that's why University of Alabama officials have talked to him, why they've taken so much time in preparing this report to do as extensive a background check as they can.
Well, the forum has a lot of questions.
Sure.
They always do, and Title Surge, he wants to know what was the per-person value of the fishing trip? Because that's important.
Yeah, it is, and you have to break that down. How much does a place usually charge for a charter? How many people were on the boat?
Right.
How much gas was used, et cetera, and it is important. And whether it was $100, $300, again, that's something that the investigation determines, and that can be part, whether it was a free benefit that they have to pay back, repay it to charity, repay him. It is part of the equation. So, but it's a hard thing to calculate. It's not hard to calculate the boat time. Charter boat time is a standard rate, which probably for the amount of people on there would be less than $100 per person.
Is this much ado about nothing?
I don't know. Not necessarily, because you do have to be compliant.
Right.
You do have to check these things out. Right now, we're in the process of making sure that these are all the facts, because you never know, what else is in somebody's background.
After question from the forum. The Deuce wants to know, and I asked, and I think you pretty much have summed this up, your feelings after everything, after everybody, the school meets with the NCAA and the SEC, if they need to do that. What is your general feeling on this?
It's a mistake to try and guess an outcome. I think that they'll look at all the facts, and it's not a hearing situation. This is a ruling by Office of Student Athlete Reinstatement in Indianapolis, and they'll look at what they've got in front of them. The Southeastern Conference will look at it. They may feel like it either doesn't need to be sent to the NCAA for a final, that they can make the final determination, or that it should be sent on and they'll make a recommendation on it. But without the facts, you don't know. I mean, we'll wait and see.
Merely speculation.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
It seems like there's some off-the-field issues. That's what's dominating the headlines coming into the season. And another issue was with Courtney Upshaw,
right,
and had some off-the-field issues. And Super B says, I know that Saban has said that Upshaw will not face suspension, and the matter would be handled internally. In your opinion, Cecil, in what way will Upshaw be held accountable by Saban or the peer group?
Well, Alabama's actually pretty proactive in trying to give some gender relation counseling to the players anyway, so I'm sure that he'll be involved in that. A lot of times in these issues there are also some anger management classes that they can take, and I know classes aren't punishment, but it is something extra that you have to do. You are on what Coach Saban referred to as behavioral probation, and whether that means you've got to get up at 5 o'clock and check in, and sometimes there's that sort of thing. I think all that will be part of it. But this is very similar. Coach Saban handled Rashad Johnson's situation where he was arrested for disorderly conduct last year. Very, very similar fashion. That turned out well. Rashad had a great senior year, went ahead, got drafted. And sometimes, and first of all, in Courtney's case, I'm never defending, men shouldn't be putting their hands on women, whatever the situation is. It shouldn't happen. But every set of circumstances is a little bit different.
Right.
You do look at the circumstances. You do look at the individual, and you decide. And I'm not the believer that the only possible punishment, the only possible avenue for discipline and correction is to suspend somebody for a game. There are a lot of different punishments, and game suspension is one of them. But game suspension also affects your teammates, and sometimes that's not the most productive thing if Coach Saban feels like somebody's a good teammate and so forth. So I'm not as big, and that goes on at other schools too, and that's why I'm not big to come on and say, oh, look, Auburn got a player arrested or Oklahoma got a player arrested, they got to throw him off. I think it's fair for all schools, but I think a lot of the pressure for, there's got to be a game suspension or a 2-game suspension, that comes from people who are interested in the outcome of the game more than they are the outcome of the life of the student athlete. Sometimes
the perception is, Cecil, that just because it's not handled out in the public, that because the public doesn't know what's happening with these players and what the punishment is, that maybe there's not punishment going on at all.
Right. Well, there has to be a certain trust factor. Again, if you're in the group that trusts Nick Saban and that group's basically Alabama fans, then you're confident that he's handling it well. If you're not, and that group is Auburn fans or Tennessee fans or LSU fans or a lot of people, then you're not gonna please them anyway. If you suspended somebody for 8 games, they'd want it to be 10. Why are you letting him back for the last 4 games? They want everybody kicked off, and this has been an issue. This isn't a new issue with Nick Saban. This is an issue that Gene Stallings faced with David Palmer. It's an issue that Coach Bryant faced with Kenny Stabler and Joe Namath, and they're all handled differently. And everybody says, oh, Coach Bryant, he kicked off Joe Namath. Well, he did, but he also let Joe back. After a certain time.
Are you ready for some football?
Sure.
Let's do football.
Great.
And Nick Saban has talked about, particularly this year, with bringing in the new quarterback with McElroy, that he's only as good as the offensive line he plays behind.
Right.
And there have been other people that have talked about and referred to this offensive line as a patchwork offensive line, if you will, only returning, 4 starters on the offense?
Right.
Particularly DJ Fluker. Talk a little bit about his progression, and has it been in line with people's idea of where he should be at this point in time?
I don't know, because people have inflated ideas. Nobody, at the end of the day, nobody lives up to the hype. Julio Jones may have been the best freshman receiver in the country last year, but he didn't live up to what some people said he was going to do, which was have 80 catches, win the Heisman Trophy, 75 of the 80 catches go for touchdowns or whatever. What DJ Fluker needs is for people to sort of separate that from the reality. He's a big, talented kid who's got a lot to learn. So, I think eventually he'll be a very good lineman, but does that mean he'll start from day one? I don't think he will. And again, it can happen, and people got so, because of the timing, for one thing, because he came as Andre Smith was leaving, they were just saying, well, he's the next Andre Smith, and he can do exactly what Andre Smith did, and that's not fair to him, because Andre Smith like Cornelius Bennett, like Julio Jones. Guys don't come along at that position very often, who'd step right in and play, and particularly true offensive linemen.
And the speed of the game, too, I think you mentioned that, coming from high school to college, and there's no amount of practice that you can get you ready for live fire.
You really are aware of it if you do what I do, which is watch college football all the time, watch 10, 12 college football games a year, and then at the end of the year go to one high school football game. Mm-hmm. And you're reaching for the remote, and you're like, let's go a little faster. You know, we're on, let's hit this thing up to 4X. You know? So, and high school football is great, but it's just not the same sport, just as college football is not the same sport as NFL
right.
football. So.
All right, we have a couple of random questions. We're excited about this. Nothing. One from AHM21, and reads, the SEC is full of many talented players on both sides of the ball. If you were starting a team with one player on offense and one player on defense, who would those two players be? And if you pick Tim Tebow, you lose points.
You're almost on offense still tempted to go with a quarterback and just say, well, Javon Sneed's the second best, and so I'd go with Javon Sneed. Saron Black at LSU, their offensive tackle would be a really good choice. Defensively, although I tend to like front seven guys, and somebody like Cody Erickberry at Tennessee is just really an outstanding player, really a great safety. So he would be in there. Greg Hardy, the pass rusher at Ole Miss, is one that you would definitely include on there. Brandon Spikes, the linebacker at Florida. So I'm going to take one up front, one in the middle, and one in the back, and we'll go. So, but yeah, Eric Berry's a heck of a guy to build around.
Cecil, you mentioned Greg Hardy. What are you hearing about the progression of his foot injury, and then he had the car wreck, and they were his attitude? They said they heard he had come around. Are you hearing anything about him?
I don't know. I've kept up very little with Ole Miss. Mm-hmm. That's far in the future. He's extremely talented. Mm-hmm. He's a great. Some people say you don't want to. You'd love to have him on your team unless there's a full moon, but That's his issues. It'll be interesting. He's he's a character. Without spin, in your honest opinion, is anyone going to beat Florida? And I'm just going to paraphrase this, but the writer says in risk of being overhyped and then being caught off guard. But if you read enough ESPN and Fox Sports and all of the outlets, they basically are saying they could just skip the regular season and just go on and be crowned SEC champs and then go on to the national title game. In the past, that's how teams have gotten caught. Well, that happens every year. Right. Whether it's USC, the media's going to anoint somebody and make them the greatest. Georgia did not like that last year. No, the monkey on their back. Absolutely, and so that's all. And what was it? I guess 2 or 3 years ago. Well, the winner of that Texas-Ohio State game, they're in. And so here's the thing: you can be the best team in the country. The last 2 years, the best team in the country. Played in the Southeastern Conference, the team that won the BCS championship, and didn't either one of them make it through undefeated. So it's a tough row. They've got a couple of non-conference games that they can't lose. Let's be frank. Charleston Southern, but you get in the Southeastern Conference and you play at LSU, and you play Georgia on a neutral field, and it can happen if you don't have your best game. So they've certainly got a chance to run the table. That's leaving the championship game off the table, but they got a chance to do it. But are they much better this year than they were last year? Maybe so, but they lost at home to Ole Miss last year. Alabama certainly had a chance against them in the fourth quarter, so they'll be tested, and doesn't make them, to me, any less of a team if they go 13-1 and win a BCS championship, or 14-0. It's hard to go undefeated in this league. And right now we're on the phone with Matt Mayoko. He's the 49ers beat writer for the Press-Democrat in Santa Rosa, California, with an update on Glen Coffee's performance so far this season at San Francisco's camp. Welcome, Matt. Let's talk about how Glen Coffee has progressed this season in camp so far.
Well, thanks for having me on the show. The San Francisco 49ers have been very pleased with what they've seen from Glen Coffee. When they drafted him in the third round, they were looking for a back to complement Frank Gore, and that's exactly what they've gotten. They've sort of gotten a Frank Gore light, if you will, a no-nonsense back who is a one-cut and get-up-the-field runner. It's sort of, like I said, a guy they love his approach. He's given them that sort of pro mentality, which is odd to see from a rookie coming in with just his work ethic and the way his mindset is heading into the season.
Glenn might not have been a household name to fans in San Francisco, but I'm curious if his performance has surprised Mike Singletary and the 49ers staff.
I think it's a surprise in the sense that generally when a rookie comes in, he doesn't do all the little things. He's not adept at pass blocking, all the little things that maybe backs who carry the ball a lot at the college level don't do. But Glen Coffee has shown a willingness to do the little things. He's picked up the pass blocking, and he's run with the football. He's been a good back catching the ball out of the backfield. So he's done everything that they've asked him to do at this point. The only issue with him, however, is that Frank Gore does not like to come off the field. So the 49ers are set. They want to find a way to get Glen Coffee on the field. He's not going to supplant Frank Gore as the starter, but he's going to give them a very good complementary piece.
And right about now, is Glen Coffee, is he the number 2 guy? Has he solidified that role yet?
Yeah, Glen Coffee is the pretty clear-cut number 2 guy, and this is something that they really haven't had since Frank Gore became the workhorse in 2006. They've had a different number 2 back every year. This year, during the draft, they went out for the sole purpose of getting somebody who, if Gore goes down for a series or can't play in a game, that they can put into the lineup and not see much drop-off. And that's exactly what they envision with Glen Coffee.
And Matt, before we go, one question not related to Glenn, but I was just curious if you could update us on the Michael Crabtree situation and where that stands now.
Well, there's really nothing to report on the Michael Crabtree front. The sides are worlds apart. They have agreed on one sense. They've agreed to disagree. Crabtree's side believes that he should be making as much, if not more, than Darius Hayward-Bay, who was chosen with the number 7 pick. The 49ers believe that the slotting system is a tried and true method, that he should make less than the number 9 pick and more than the number 11 pick. Both of those picks have been signed. So the two sides are working on completely different parameters right now, and there's no end in sight to this Michael Crabtree contract impasse.
Another topic that comes up when we talk about these rookies going to camp and coming from Alabama is Andre Smith. Cecil, what in the world is going on with him? Because contrary to what you believe, and a lot of people have said about what kind of person Andre is, when you covered him in Alabama, it seems like there have been controversy has followed him since he has left Alabama. What is going on? He's got the holdout now with the Bengals, and apparently he's left Cincinnati, and the Bengals they're making some tough statements up there about what kind of money they're going to pay him. What's going on with this kid?
Well, I think it's two things. And first of all, Andre certainly hadn't helped himself from December the 1st on with some of the decisions that he's made. And he needs to be mature, and he needs to take care of business and switching agents and so forth. Everybody sort of knows the background, and Andre needs to do better at that. At the same time, business is business, and the fact is, the Bengals are not the highest paying organization in the NFL. They're not, at this point, making an offer that really seems to fit into that number 6 draft choice slot the way that salaries usually do. And so Andre and his agent may feel like, that it's really the mature thing to do is not to sign this contract, is to wait and see.
Cecil, it's been a great show. I'm looking forward to the season. It's going to be a great football season and great show.
Appreciate it, Rachel.
Thank you.
Glad to have you.
I'm Rachel Baribeau. That wraps up this segment, this edition of the Cecil Hurt Show. We'll be back next week, but make sure to go to tidesports.com, check out the forums, and get your questions in, because we answer your questions right here on the Cecil Hurt Show. We'll see you next week.